Hey guys, welcome to today's video. We're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions offense in 2021 and what to expect from them next season. Before we get started though, please drop a quick like and a sub on today's video. That would really help my channel grow. I'd really appreciate that. And with that said, I hope you enjoy the video and let's dive right into it. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions offense in 2021, what to expect from them. But before we get started, we need to talk about what they did in 2020. And you can see all their leaders. Matthew Stafford with 4,000 passing yards. We see Adrian Peterson with 600 rushing yards. And we see Marvin Jones Jr. with 978 receiving yards. All three of these guys are no longer with the team. So when we look at, where the Lions were last year in terms of those big stats, it's not going to really tell us that much. I'm still going to take a look at them just to show you where they were and how, they really struggled last year. So offensively, 20th in the league. Passing offense-wise, they probably were in that ballpark too. They actually were number 10th in the league in passing offense. Actually, that's better than I thought that they were. With Matthew Stafford, they were able to throw the football quite a bit. TJ Hockenson had a big year last year. Marvin Jones Jr. had a big year last year. Quintez Cephus showed up at times for them. Rushing offense, though, was not their strong suit. 30th in the NFL in that regard. But we will talk about that all in today's video and where they can improve into next season. So what are we expecting from them? For starters, we got to talk about the big Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford trade. And to be honest, I really like this trade a lot for Detroit. Detroit needs to rebuild. And although Jared Goff is not a quarterback that you really necessarily want to rebuild around, you got 2 first-round picks for him. Even though you're taking on his massive contract, those 2 first-round picks are really going to help your team in the future. So overall, I still think it gives the Lions a capable starter. I mean, Jared Goff can be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. It's just who is around him. And although the weapons in Detroit are kind of questionable, I don't love the receivers, and we'll talk about that in today's video. I still think that Goff himself is a solid quarterback in the NFL. This guy can throw for 4,000 yards. And last year he threw for just shy of 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, tied for 31st in the league. Not great last year, but we've seen him a lot better before. We really have. We've seen him throw for big amounts of yards, big touchdown numbers, and and low interception numbers. And that's why he earned a massive payday a few years ago. When he led that Rams team to the Super Bowl and on a deep playoff run. Also, he's got playoff experience. This guy's got experience. He's got leadership skills. I really like what Jared Goff brings to this Lions offense, especially a team that's, in a rebuilding phase. And I think Goff is a good quarterback to be a rebuilding quarterback because I think he's got some potential. He's got the ability to elevate guys on offense and just in the locker room too. So although I don't think that this Lions offense will be at the top of the league next year, I don't think it will necessarily be Goff's fault. I don't think he's going to be a great next year. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's not going to go up there and put up top 10 numbers, but he's not going to be a liability. He's going to put up 4,000 yards. He's going to put up 25-ish touchdowns. He's going to put up 12-ish interceptions, and he's going to get the job done. And I think that they'll end up winning probably somewhere between 6 and 8-ish games, maybe 5 to 8 games next year, somewhere in that ballpark. But I don't necessarily think that Goff will be the issue on offense. I think he'll be fine. Running wise, I think that this offense is going to get a lot better running the football for a variety of reasons. One, this is before any potential Todd Gurley rumors. I mean, there were some Todd Gurley rumors earlier this offseason about how he might be headed to Detroit. This is before that, so I'm not really counting that in this analysis and in this breakdown. But I mean, if I were to, I think Gurley will add some power to that running game, some touchdowns. That's pretty much it for me, though. But with the guys currently on the roster, DeAndre Swift and Jamaal Williams, I really like the 1-2 punch that DeAndre Swift and Jamaal Williams have. DeAndre Swift last year went on the field and went healthy, which was a concern at times. I mean, if you look at the numbers, you're like 520 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, not great stats, but really good as a pass catcher too. 46 catches, 357 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. And although he did have that game-losing drop early in the season, I think that was against Chicago. Maybe it was against Atlanta. I don't remember. No, I think it was against Chicago. It was probably against Chicago. I want to say it was against Chicago. That was the one bad play that he had all year, but overall he really showed that he could be a solid runner and a solid complete running back for this team. This guy could easily rush for 700 yards, put up 400 yards receiving, and put up probably a combined 11, 12 touchdowns, and I don't think that's a crazy stretch. He's a really complete running back. He's a good as a pass blocker. good as a runner outside and inside the tackles. He's got the breakaway speed. We saw that against Jacksonville where he had a massive game. But more importantly, he's really productive on early downs as a pass catcher and even on third downs as a pass catcher. So you can put him on the field at any time. And he complements really well with Jamaal Williams. And although Jamaal Williams is a bigger back who can be a power back, but also have some ability as an elusive guy too, really using his speed in open space to make plays. I like the more power side of his game. DeAndre Swift for me is much more the elusive back in this 1-2 combo, but Williams is an overall back that he's kind of in a way a worse DeAndre Swift. He's a little bit more powerful than DeAndre Swift. He's a little bit bigger than DeAndre Swift, but he's got the speed, he's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got the pass catching ability. So I think that, the lines are deep at running back, and although that was a concern for them last year, really, Adrian Peterson was their RB1, getting touchdowns, being that power back for them. They really need some elusiveness and they need some pass catching. That's what DeAndre Swift and Jamaal Williams bring to this Lions offense. The wide receivers, though, that is where I'm really worried about this team. Tyrell Williams is one of the more underrated receivers in today's game. He's getting up there in age. He's not what he used to be. He's coming up to his age 29 season. Missed all of last year due to injury, but, in 2019, you look at those numbers, 42 catches, 651 receiving yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns. He's not a receiver 1, though. He's a wide receiver 2, a bad wide receiver 2, a good wide receiver 3. A pretty bad wide receiver 2, an okay wide receiver 3. That's what he is. But he's going to be the number 1 receiver in Detroit next year, which is kind of concerning. I think that he could put up 800 yards and 8 touchdowns if he plays well, somewhere in the ballpark of 60 catches. I like what he's able to do with his length, and overall, he's just he's an all-around solid receiver. There's not a lot to his game, but he uses his length well. He's 6'4", 205, so he's a little bit on the bigger side, but he's also pretty lanky too. He's a lanky big receiver, not really the guy who's going to go up and catch the football, but a guy who's going to use his legs and use his length and his reach to go up and make plays and be just a difference maker in the passing game. But behind him, there's really a lack of excitement here. I mean, Breshad Perriman has not been good to start his NFL career. He's played for the Jets. He was okay there, but he's not going to be a guy that you can count on getting 750 receiving yards and 5-6 touchdowns. I think he puts the 500 receiving yards in this offense. And then Quintez Cephus was solid last year at times under Matthew Stafford. I don't know how he fares under Jared Goff, but really Tyrell Williams, in my opinion, he's a depth receiver, and him as your receiver 1 concerns me. Breshad Perriman is not a good receiver 2. Quintez Cephus is fine as a slot guy. And then they did draft Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC. They had Geronimo Allison, former Green Bay Packer there. Khalif Raymond saw some time. But overall, this is not a great receiving core. This is going to be the real issue with this team. Jared Goff, throughout his entire Rams career, was throwing to some of the NFL's best receivers. Cooper Kupp really developed a nice connection with him. Robert Woods had a good connection with him. But, the receivers are going to be a real issue next year. How can Goff get the most out of his receivers? That's going to be a massive, a massive thing for this Lions offense next year. How well can the receivers play? And how well can Goff play with the receivers that he has? I think the running game will be fine, but it's really the receivers that concern me. But, TJ Hockenson is not going to concern me. Hockenson has established himself as one of the better tight ends in the NFL, definitely a top 10 tight end after a really nice second year. Obviously, remember his first year in 2019 was kind of a struggle. Couldn't really get going after a strong week 1, I think, against Arizona. Couldn't really get going for the rest of the year. But 67 catches last year, 723 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns, up there among some of the better tight ends in today's NFL, up there with guys like Logan Thomas, guys like Mike Gesicki. He's a really solid tight end, TJ Hockenson. I think that he can bring a lot to this offense. More importantly, as that true number 1 target, that true number 1 guy that you can go after. And to be honest, I think there's a scenario where he ends up having 1,000 receiving yards, especially with no Marvin Jones Jr., no Kenny Golladay. I think that Hockenson last year was that number 2 option when Golladay was healthy or when Marvin Jones Jr. was healthy, and was that number 2 guy to go to. But now he's the number 1 guy. So I think we're going to see a lot more emphasis on how they can get the ball into TJ Hawkinson's hands as he's a legit playmaker. He's a guy that can be good in open space. He's a guy that can be good in the red zone. He's a guy that can really be a difference maker as the pass catcher. And they do have Darren Fells behind him, former Houston Texan. He can do a lot too, much more as a blocker, but also, he can be a red zone threat too. He's, I think, 6'4", former basketball player, and he found success with Deshaun Watson. So I like the tight ends on this team. I think that they're deep at tight end. I really like TJ Hockenson a lot, but the truth is, as a number one pass catcher, I don't love having a tight end. That doesn't really work for any team other than the Raiders, and even then, I could say that it doesn't work for the Raiders just because of their lack of depth behind Darren Waller. But overall, I like what Hockenson brings to the table. It's just how much talent is there behind him on the outside, and for pass catchers wise. But on the offensive line, I really like this offensive line a lot. It's really coming into its own. I mean, Taylor Decker is being paid like a starting left tackle in the NFL. He's one of the better left tackles in the NFL. Goes without saying that, playing Detroit hasn't necessarily helped his career. But at the end of the day, he doesn't get enough national recognition. He's definitely a top 15 left tackle in the league, if not top 12. Jonah Jackson, rookie last year out of Ohio State, played really well. Frank Ragnow is arguably the best center in today's game. Definitely top 5 at his position. Really good run blocker, really good pass protector. Earned a big payday that really set the market for centers and their contracts. Big V at right guard. We saw him at right tackle a little bit last year, but with Penei Sewell being drafted, who I'll get to in a second, who I think Penei Sewell was really going to help this offense a lot. Big V, really good run blocker, bigger guy, and that ability allows him to play right guard, allows him to play right tackle. That versatility is important. But more importantly, Penei Sewell playing right tackle, I think is going to be absolutely imperative for him to get off to a strong start. He is raw coming out of Oregon, but at the same time, he's a mauler. He's a great run blocker, and I think he's going to be the guy that you're going to want to run behind if you're DeAndre Swift and Jamaal Williams. I think he's much better as a guy who can create space for the run game than Taylor Decker. But I think that right side of that offensive line with the two big bodies in Penei Sewell and Big V are going to be guys that you're really going to want to emphasize running behind. Both of those guys are absolutely massive. They're maulers. They're guys who can create space. So if you're Detroit, watch them running to the right side of their offensive line behind Ragnow, Big V, and Penei Sewell. I think Sewell has the ability to be a premier tackle in the NFL, a guy who can really be a Pro Bowl year in and year out. And I think that his ability also as a pass protector, although is not as good as his run blocking skills, I think that there's improvement to be had there. But he could still be a difference maker in pass protection and in run blocking, but more in run blocking. So really look for the Lions to run behind the right side of this offensive line. Especially really utilize TJ Hockenson in the passing game, utilize the running backs especially in the passing game too, and then look for Tyrell Williams to have a nice year. But after that, I just don't know how much success Jared Goff can have with the weapons that he has. So those wide receivers really concern me. So at the end of the day, I think that this Lions offense will be somewhere around 20th in the league, maybe lower than that. Just because there isn't enough depth and there isn't enough talent at wide receiver for Goff to be able to throw for high amounts of yards and high amounts of touchdowns. I think he'll still end up getting the job done, but it's going to be tough for him with the weapons he has in place. So watch for the Lions to be somewhere around 20th best in the NFL, with definitely some improvements to their run game with another year of DeAndre Swift and some emphasis on that offensive line this offseason. But without Kenny Golladay, without Marvin Jones Jr. this year, after losing them during free agency, I think it's going to be hard for this Lions offense to really throw the ball deep downfield and really throw the ball deep downfield with accuracy and make plays downfield. So at the end of the day, I think this Lions team will struggle offensively next season. And with that said, that's pretty much going to end the video for today. Did you agree with my analysis? Why or why not? Leave your comments and thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you're new around here, please drop a like and a sub on today's video. I'd really appreciate that. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, see ya.